If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of three. Inside my online program, Fitness Mama, I just love helping support women to care for their bodies during pregnancy, prepare their bodies for birth, and support their after-birth recovery, helping them feel confident and strong inside out during this important stage of their lives. In this podcast, join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth, and postnatal recovery, helping you through every step of the journey. It is absolutely possible to feel amazing and confident in our bodies during this motherhood journey, and I want that for you. Come and say hi to me on Instagram at @fitnessmama, and let's dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Fitness Mama podcast. Today I am really happy to chat to midwife Clare, and in this episode we talk about when is a good time to go to hospital when you're in labour. We talk about that transition to hospital, which is often the no man's land, and it's often not talked about as much. We've got lots of strategies for what we can do when we're at home in labour, and there's lots of things that we know can happen when we're in hospital, but that transition is generally less discussed. So we talk about when to go to hospital, the transition to hospital, and what happens when you first get to hospital, and how you can really ease into your new space and help to ease that transition. It's a really great episode. Claire discusses how to keep your focus and create and maintain that beautiful birth space. And she also discusses how the support person can help too. So this might be an episode that's worth sending through to your support person. So as I said, I'm speaking to midwife Clare, who is obviously a midwife. She's got an amazing podcast, and I will put all her links in the show notes. So great episode. Stay tuned. Just quickly, before we do dive in, I would like to let you know that there is, if you're pregnant but you're keen to perhaps get back into running, get back into exercise after birth, I have a free checklist. It's a return to running checklist. So gain clarity with this super quick and simple return to running checklist to make sure you are on track to best support your body in returning to running after having a baby. So as a women's health physio, this checklist encompasses everything I feel is so important to consider during this important postpartum period. So download this free checklist at fitnessmama.com/running checklist, and the link is in the show notes. All right, let's dive into this episode. Clare, thank you so much for joining me today on the Fitness Mama podcast. So we are chatting all things when to go to hospital, talking about that transition to hospital, what happens when you get to hospital, all those really important things that I think sometimes are easily overlooked. So welcome, and thanks for chatting today.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm suddenly so nervous to chat. It's hilarious, but thank you for having me, and I'm here and full of coffee and beans, so let's get chatting.
Perfect. So you've got your own podcast. Tell me briefly, how did you get into this area of midwifery and starting a podcast and all the rest?
Oh, goodness, midwifery. I stumbled across it, truly. I grew up knowing all about my birth. So it was very much babies and obstetric intervention, all really normal, hospitals, birth normal, and did nursing to then eventually I wanted to be a mothercraft nurse. I thought I'd needed to go that way. And then so by chance did midwifery because I got accepted into it through my hospital, through my uni, and sort of was grinding along in nursing and mid and grinding and didn't sort of find that woohoo moment in it. I had a massive period of burnout where I moved interstate and returned to midwifery back in Victoria, pretty much bare bones. Yep, I just got to do it because it's just what I know, and was heartbroken about it. And fast forward through my own birth experiences, I've suddenly just my mind has exploded open, and the world of midwifery has just absolutely cracked itself open to me. And I wonder how I ever questioned how I could be a midwife, because I am a midwife to my core. So I'm very proudly a privately practicing midwife now. The podcast came about through wanting to chat. I'm a talker. I'm not the best at the words typing, but I'm a talker, and I believe it's my superpower. So that came about just wanting to share my own experience of burnout in midwifery, and I guess encouraging freshie midwives along that path of self-discovery within a profession and within that hospital training system. It's a big beast of a thing. So yeah, it's sort of just blown my socks off the last couple of years, just how much I'm just knee deep in the profession. Like, it's bonkers.
Oh, that's great. You enjoy it. And when we were chatting about, because I've appeared on your podcast, and now here we are chatting, and I said, you know, what's your zone of genius? What could you talk about in your sleep? What do you really want to chat about? And you suggested this topic, and I loved it because, you know, so many times we talk about pain or preparing for birth and motherhood, but this little point in time in the transition to hospital, I was like, oh, brilliant topic. What made you say that?
I find, so I've been a childbirth education consultant through the hospital and privately as well. And I find that this is the point where I receive a lot of questions, and often the advice is conflicting from the healthcare provider. So usually what you do, you're in labour, you call up wherever you're choosing to birth, hey, or you contact your midwife, hey, this is what's going on. Do I come in now? And support people always find that very tricky too. Well, how do I know when it's time to go? And there's no real thick and fast rules, which makes this topic really tricky. And again, now I'm thinking, why did I decide to talk about this? But when you're choosing to birth in a hospital, there is that transition from home safety bubble, getting into a car, and then getting into hospital and recreating that safety bubble, which is really, really important. And there's been many conversations that I've had with people that don't live close to hospitals. Oh no, what if I birth my baby in the car? And firstly, amazing, well done. You've obviously found a safe space, but you don't want to be too early. You don't want to be too late. And there's sort of this middle zone that no one really knows how to navigate. So yeah, it just comes from that.
Yeah, I love it. And you're right. A lot of education about what sort of things you can be doing at home, strategies for home. There's a lot of strategy, you know, once you get into hospital, obviously there's lots of things going on there, whereas a bit of a no man's land, no woman's land, I should say.
Yes.
No person's land. Okay, so let's get to the crux of it. When do you go to hospital?
And do you know what? Whenever the labouring person feels like it. And that's a blanket rule. Wherever if you're choosing to birth at home, when do I get the birth pool out? Whenever the birthing person chooses. And I know that is a really great answer, and it's really not helpful, but we women have this amazing thing called intuition. And in pregnancy and birth, we are absolutely primed up to our eyeballs with intuition. We've largely learnt to not tap into that. So that's a whole other conversation and podcast. But it's whenever the woman wants to, and whether that's with the first tightening that they feel, or whether it's after 3 days worth of tightenings and ups and downs and arounds and abouts. It's whenever they want to, because at that point, that's when they either need more support, they either know they're coming closer to birthing, or something might be going amiss. So it's not, I don't prescribe to when your contractions are every 3 to 4 minutes, coming at least for a minute, and they're at least for an hour, which is what you get told by your hospital care provider, which in saying that too, that is also completely fine. If you want to stick to a prescription, that's great. In terms of labour and your hormones, sticking to that sort of tick box written prescription is you thinking way too much. If you know anything about labour, thinking is the enemy, I suppose, decision-making and thinking. So whenever you innately need to change space, need extra support, feel like you're birthing, you'll just go, hey, this is it. And we all come about it in different ways. We might talk a bit of junk about going to hospital. It might be like, get the car. I just remember roaring at my partner, Mitch, just like, he's like, are we going? I'm like, yeah, I think so. And for me, it was, I needed my midwife and she wasn't coming to my home. So it just, how you're choosing to birth really impacts that as well.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot to unpack there, isn't there? But
it's a lot. I just realized I'm looking at you going, oh, there's a lot to that because often that advice is really conflicting with what your care provider tells you.
But what you say totally makes sense. And just a couple of episodes ago, I think it's 135, it's all about creating a calm birthing space. And it was with a hypnobirthing practitioner. And what you just said then was, you don't want to think. You don't want your thoughts to go into that cortical part of your brain. You want to be, correct me if I'm wrong, but within yourself and like deeper within yourself. You don't want to have the thoughts, that cortical thinking.
I'm nodding as you're talking because if you're thinking, you're not there yet. So you may be contracting absolutely 100% and working and moving and doing all the things. But if you are able to still have that thinking and is this time? Is it now? Is it happening? Yeah, something's happening, but you're not in that full primal body taking over type scenario. And we know that whenever you either feel excitement or fear, your body is going to flood with cortisol, so your stress hormone, and your body doesn't know what's going on. It's just going, here, have the hormone. And adrenaline is an arch nemesis of oxytocin. So we love oxytocin. We love endorphins. We want that for our birth. That's that safe space. Once we feel safe and private and unobserved, our birthing hormones just have this magical, beautiful moment where they just sort of flow into each other. And adrenaline sort of counteracts that. And we know that transition from home, safe space, to a car, foreign space, you're probably a bit frightened. You're probably observing the traffic as well. And then transitioning into hospital, which is inherently a foreign place. Whether you've done hospital tours or not, it's a hospital. We associate hospitals with sickness and illness. So automatically your body's going to go, whoop, have a bit more adrenaline here because A, I'm going to meet my baby, and B, holy shit, it's a hospital. What are we going to do? And you really have to work hard. Again, once you're settled into where you need to be, you need to work hard to then relax back into that. And I find even just the method of, walking into a hospital and you go through triage and you're asked all these questions, you're being invited to think and to answer how you're feeling, how you're going. It's pulling you further and further out of that natural birthing instinct. So support people, alert, like you do the answering of the questions and you do those things, and the laboring woman can just continue to do her thing. So, headphones in, blast your music. It can be Enya and relaxation. It can be whatever else you want. It can be affirmations, but the more you shut yourself into your bubble, the less likely it is that you're going to be sort of dragged out of it in a hormonal sense.
So that's perfect next question, which is all about that transition to hospital. Let's take a step back because there's a lot of really good stuff here, I reckon. So you're at home, you've decided, okay, I want to get into hospital. Can you talk us through, and I'm saying ideal with air quotation marks because, it's all very good to say this, but reality is a whole different beast. So we're just in the ideal world, how would you consider an ideal transition in an ideal world?
So look, going by the whenever the woman wants rule and having had some type of tightening contractions, wherever we're calling them, having something that you can recognize as a pattern. I don't necessarily encourage timing things. That's more of a tool used to relay information to midwives on the phone. So support people can 100% be doing that in the background. But the birthing or labouring woman at this point just needs to be going with it. So you've made the decision to go, all right, your support person's calling your care provider ahead of time. Hey, this is what's going on. This is where we're at. She's decided to come on into the hospital. This is what's going on. And we'll likely go, all right, can I speak to them? So what we're doing is not dismissing what the support person is saying. We want to hear the labouring person. So a lot about birth can be I guess, assessed on the phone by the sounds you're making. So, you know, I don't know if this is the vision you have of birth and labor, but like this swaying, hypnotic, like humming, lovely type scenario doesn't always happen. That can be very much in the earlier stages. But when you're getting to like the full guts of it, you're really quite vocal. And when you're getting to that sort of bearing down stage, it's really a throaty, I'm not going to make the sound because it's going to be horrible, but no, I actually can't, because I know how I sounded in labor, and I'm wanting to make that noise because that is just, I could never recreate that unless in labor. But if we're listening to you and how much you're breathing through and what things you're coming out with, if you're saying anything, we can assess that on the phone. And so we might say, how are you feeling? I'm feeling really good. No worries. Give it another hour. And you call me back if you want to, or call me back when you need something. So there's always the option to stay home for longer. Otherwise, it sounds like you're doing a great job. Why don't you grab your bags and come on into the hospital? So there's no urgency necessarily about it. In an ideal world, everything going well, right? Well, pregnancy, low risk, beautiful, healthy woman, just having a baby, right? And so you've then got that transition from wherever you physically are in your home. So you might be in the shower, you might be in the bath, you will be in a darkened space. So going back to that episode you talked about, creating that safe space, lighting is really, really important. So you're transitioning from there, and I highly recommend headphones with whatever music you've got going, just to block out that, baby, you all right? Where'd that bag go? Where's that wrap? I didn't know, but where's your toothbrush? Just go. You're just going to get in the car and you're just going to go. You're going to strap yourself in which way you can, and you're going to safely drive to the hospital. And the point here where you're physically getting out of the car to go into the front door can be quite daunting, because this is it, right? So you absolutely take your time. You're wanting to just slowly, and if you need to stop, you stop. There is no rush to get to where you need to be. And you're wanting to make sure that there's a lot of breath work. So if you've done any classes or anything like that, you would learn that your breath is your superpower in labor. And your support person really needs to keep prompting you to do that, because when you're in the thick of it and when you're walking upstairs or when you're pressing a button for an elevator, there will be a lot of people going, oh my gosh, this person's laboring. Can I get your wheelchair? Can I do this? Oh my gosh, it's birth. And there's still a lot of fear around birth, and this baby's just going to come flying out. And it's about support person protecting that space, but also, just holding your hand and creating that comfort, because of course you've got your eyes closed because you're trying to decrease external stimuli, right? So headphones on, eyes closed, and you're going to meet a midwife, and at no point are you obliged or required to be friendly. And I say that really nicely. You don't have to, hey, how you going? It's an automatic thing. We say, hey, how are you? Hey, we know how you are. You don't have to answer. If answering takes you out of the zone, please just put your hand up and continue on your merry way. There is no part about what you're experiencing right now requires you to be friendly. And I don't know if that resonates with you at all, but you're not there to be my friend. I'm there to provide clinical care that you need, to glean what information I need to without pulling you out of your zone as much as I can. So if you put the hand up and just continue to sway and move and do your thing, vocalize what you need to, I will do what I need to, and or speak to your support person to gain consent for anything that needs to happen.
Love it.
Does that make a bit of sense?
Oh, 100%.
There's still so much in there.
And for my first, I did everything you're not recommending. Chatting away. My husband was really excited because, he wasn't at work, and the cricket had just started. He was just talking to everyone that came in, and it was not a good experience. I'll just go up and say for myself, it was a beautiful birth. My baby was born, but yeah. So I totally, whereas with the third baby, I took more of this on board, and it was such a nicer experience. It's really interesting.
Third time, you just sort of get into it like there's no messing around now. Third, come on.
Like, everyone disappear. I'm doing this.
But it's also, I think, from experience, you value it differently, not more, but just differently. And, I've had 3 babies too, and 3 very different experiences with each of the labours and birth. And the one difference, I felt so young looking back now, having my first baby. And at that point, hospital and intervention was a very normal thing for me because I had trained through a private hospital. Going to hospital was the thing. And it's just those little decisions that you make, transit for me. I'm just trying to think back, like the car ride is uncomfortable. It's not an enjoyable experience. And I remember for my most recent labor, my partner's like, you nearly deafened me in the car. I'm like, that's fine. But why did you stop at the lights? That's all I'm saying. So the intensity of the thing is just huge. And it's almost like a nod of respect to labor and birth and that preparation. And I'm talking around in circles now. It's just there's so much to it and there's so much power to be had that, focusing on is the baby bag packed? That's actually not the thing you need to worry about. If worse comes to worse, a baby's got a nappy from, somewhere in the hospital, the midwives will get you one and the baby stays on your chest. Like the things that we should be focusing on is just how intense contractions can feel. And, you mentioned pain before and your own perception of pain and how labor and birth is this gradual build. It can be over 3 days. It can be over 3 hours, 30 minutes. It's how you move with it and cope with it and understand that your body is absolutely perfectly designed. There's no question, except for the one in your mind that you've been, I guess, gifted from every single story, every single movie, every single comment about pregnancy, labor and birth and all of these things. And I'm going a bit too far the other way now.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, so we've talked about when to go to hospital. We've talked about that transition to hospital. You're now at hospital. Can you talk us through the first, until you go into the delivery suite, like what happens?
Yes.
What can happen?
This episode is brought to you by Baby Bee, Australian-owned and designed prams combining quality, safety and style. Not only does Baby Bee let you try their prams at home with free returns for 9 months, yes, that's 9 months, they also offer an industry-leading 3-year warranty for total peace of mind. With thousands of 5-star reviews, around-the-clock customer care, and up to $300 of free accessories with every pram, what are you waiting for? Go visit www.babybeeonline.com and check them out for yourself. And yes, for listeners of the podcast, there is a 20% discount code. Enter FITBEE, FITBEE 20 at checkout, and T's and C's apply.
So usually you go through a triage system. So you'll go to almost like a holding bay. Let's call it a holding bay. And there are a number of interventions that are offered and I guess positioned in a way that are sort of gatekeeping you in there. So the first is the monitoring, so your CTG monitoring and a vaginal examination. So we need to do these things to be able to assess where you're at in your labour, to then say, yes, you're going into birth suite, or no, you're going back home. So firstly, going back to what I said earlier, you've come to hospital for a reason. So whether that's because you're 10 centimetres going to birth your baby or 2 centimetres and need extra support, I find that really, really hard to navigate. And as someone who educates in the space and works in the space, I find it really, really conflicting because both of those things can be declined and you are still entitled to waltz in through to birth suite because that's the support that you need. So I'm just putting that out there. So you will meet a midwife. They will offer you these things. You're either accepting or declining of these things, which you will do your own research about, vaginal examinations and the CTG monitoring. And so ideal world, whatever's happened. You've gone into birth suite. The number one thing that I recommend the labouring woman and or support person to do is turn off the lights. We want the body to calm down. So remember, we're surging with adrenaline. Adrenaline and oxytocin are arch nemesis. They cancel each other out. They do not coexist together. So we need to get you relaxed again because you're super excited. So the midwife will be buzzing and doing what they need to do. support person sort of running interference with that, and you are just like getting into your space. So if there's a birth pool in there, you're getting, hey, midwife, you can start filling that up. In the meantime, you're going into the bathroom. You're either going to start the shower in there too and turn the lights down, or you're going to sit straddle style on the back of the toilet in there and turn the lights down and get your breath back, because 99.9% of the time you've lost your breath and you might be feeling a little bit out of control at this point, which is normal for a labour progression, but it's how you get yourself back on track with your breath that really, I guess, impacts on how you feel about your labour. So lights off, you're getting into the bathroom if the lights aren't allowed, and I do that in air quotations as well, they aren't allowed to be turned off. The bath is getting filled up. Your support person's also saying, yep, I've got a heat pack here. Can we get that heated up? Can we get our water bottle filled up? All of the creature comforts that you would have had at home. The bed, I highly recommend that you put the height of the bed up and you do not lie down on it. Unless you're having an epidural, which is a whole other conversation, you don't actually need to lie down on the bed for any reason. And I'm not going to go into the pelvis zone because that is your thing and you're like nodding as I'm talking. Use it to lean on. Put the back of the bed up and lean on the back of the bed. Use it as a tool for movement and encouraging upright and forward movement. So all of these different things, it's not a prescription. It's not a tick one and then do the next. You do what you feel like you need to do. And I talk a lot about feeling into it and feel like it. If you're saying to yourself, I don't know, do I feel like the bath right now? No, you're not feeling into it. So you need to just reset. And my big reset is always the bathroom. So once you're through there and you're cool and you're calm, when you're in a beautiful warm shower and you're vocalizing beautifully and the midwife's interrupted you 500 times and your support person's just, put the hand up and said, all right, we'll get to that in a minute. You're then back in your zone of your being in your body. So you're back to that cool, calm, maybe not cool, that I guess that surrender and that intensity of labor. And then you can go from there.
Love it. I feel I've been taken on a journey. It's bringing back memories too.
It's the lights off just changes everything. And I had a beautiful midwife. Then the fairy lights went on, the curtain went around the front door. So the feeling of being unobserved, being in a private space and in darkness just helps biologically you to labour better. Now, Dr. Sarah Buckley has amazing work on oxytocin and endorphins and the dance of the labour hormones. So she is an amazing resource, and she has most recent research out now about oxytocin and its role in labour. So it's just once you understand that the environment needs to be in your hormones' favour, it's a whole new world.
Makes sense.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And I loved your little tip of, this was my go-to. It was sitting on a football with my arms up on the bed, so the bed up high.
Yeah.
Because then I could put my head, my forehead on my forearms, and it's like I was just in my own little bubble. I couldn't see anyone.
Yeah. And so you're getting the benefit of the moving of your pelvis, but also if you need to stand up a bit, if you're feeling a bit intense, you can, and you're leaning. And so everything upright and forward is going to help that baby rotate and descend where it needs to. Plus, you're wiggling the hips, you're moving around. And, like you just said, you feel like you're in your own zone. Well, you're blocking the world out with your arms up. It's also too that I love the birth pool because it's almost like another protective bubble around you. And I say that with love for my medical colleagues. But sometimes as the person in labour, you just want to know that they can't access you easily. So even just the proximity of the bed, well, there's a bed dividing me from you. Just that mental challenge of being in a hospital can really help. And being in a bathroom, in a shower, show me an obstetric reg that will get in a shower in a bathroom. And then you'll sort of understand where I'm coming from. But, yeah, there are a lot of things that I recommend for protecting of space as well.
Yeah. Look, Claire, there's so many questions I'd love to ask, but I think in terms of sticking to that topic, I just love the fact, and maybe we need to chat another time about a different topic, but let's leave it at that because I think that's just beautiful. We've talked about going to hospital, the transition to hospital, what happens when we get to hospital. So that whole period of time between home and hospital.
Yeah.
So it was amazing. To finish off, do you have any final words of wisdom or any final tips for pregnant women who might be listening today?
Goodness gracious, I don't even know where to start. Can I give you 3 really quick ones? I won't elaborate. Get a doula or a midwife. Do some research and reading on birth hormones and support people. You are arguably the most important person in the room. Mic drop.
Love it.
Done.
Okay, tell us how to find you.
So you can find me on Instagram. I am To Birth Beautifully. I am also, for my midwife friends, Your Midwife Mentor. I have a podcast, Your Midwife Mentor podcast, and my website is tobirthbeautifully.com.au. That's where you can find me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Claire. Love the chat.
I appreciate it.
Might have to have you on again soon.
Oh, gosh.
Those who have listened, send us an Instagram message and let us know what topic you would like to hear from Claire.
Because goodness knows I can chat. Gosh.
We'll chat soon. Bye.
Thank you.
And before I sign off, remember my team and I will be putting together the show notes for this episode with all the links, including how to connect with midwife Claire at fitnessmama.com/podcast. And don't forget to send Claire and myself a DM on Instagram. We would love to hear from you. Just let us know if you listen to the episode and let us know if there are any other topics you'd like to hear from us. So that's it. Have a fabulous day, everyone. And I look forward to you joining me next week for another episode of the Fitness Mama podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at Fitness Mama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer, materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. I'll see you soon.